What's up, everyone? It's AG Reviews, back at it again. Last night I had the chance to check out 28 Years Later, so let's talk about it. So 28 Years Later is the long-awaited sequel to the 28 Days Later franchise, and it sees director-writer combo Danny Boyle and Alex Garland returning to the franchise ever since the very first film, and delivering a sequel that is very much a long time in the making and that everyone was anticipating. And before I kick off the review, my history with this franchise and with the first two films is that I loved it. I absolutely love those two films. I saw them at a very young age. So for me, they're kind of a part of like my core memories when it comes to zombie horror. 28 Days Later is one of the first zombie movies I ever saw, and it absolutely terrified me to my core. Being the movie that kind of kicked off like the smarter, faster moving zombies. I absolutely loved that movie. But it had been a long time since I had seen it. I hadn't watched either movie basically since I was a kid. Before watching them again here leading up to 28 Years Later. But rewatching them, it just reaffirmed everything I thought about them, especially that first movie. I really feel like that first movie was so influential, had such an impact on the zombies genre. And, I liked 28 Weeks Later, didn't love it. I think it was definitely a step down from 28 Days Later. But I, like everyone else, have just been eagerly anticipating this film. And then, the trailers for this film came out, the news of Danny Boyle and Alex Garland coming back, like everything about this film had me extremely excited for it. And then leading up to, the weeks before the movie, some people were seeing it early and reviews started to come out and we were kind of getting like mixed reactions here. And, I had heard from some people I trust their opinion on movies that it was a disappointment. So I got a little nervous, right, before I went to go see this film. And basically the online fan reaction of this film since it's released has been very divisive. You either are loving it or you're hating it, and it's like a war zone on the internet right now with these people attacking each other. So what did I think of 28 Years Later? I'm happy to report that I am on the side that I very much enjoyed this film. I think there is a lot here that is done very well and works very well. I think there are some things, obviously, that don't work so well. And I don't think this is a perfect film. I don't think it is better than 28 Days Later. I tend to think it's better than 28 Weeks Later. But I think it does a lot good, some bad. Overall, though, I think this is a fantastic movie. And to kickstart my positives, and to me, the number one thing about this film that I think works the best about it, and what made me care about this film and actually made this a positive experience for me, is the characters. You have the four leads in this film. The main character being Alfie Williams, who plays the child Spike in this movie. From my understanding, this is his first role in film, and he carries this film. I mean, this is where I think some of the divisiveness of the movie comes from, is that a lot of people didn't really know going in that this was going to be essentially a coming-of-age story, right? And I understand that. I kind of get it. From the trailers, it basically makes you think that this is going to be Aaron Taylor Johnson leading, with the kid, with Spike. But that's not what this movie is. And I liked that our expectations were subverted in that way. And I think that all hinges on what Alfie Williams as Spike does in this film, because his performance is incredible. I usually tend to be a little extra critical of child actors because more times than not, I don't think they're that great. But he does a fantastic job in this film, and with the character journey that he goes on here and the arc he goes on. He came to play. He was fantastic. And this being his first role, I think is incredible. So Alfie Williams to me, as the lead, as Spike, is one of the main things that makes this work. And then Jodie Comer, I mean, she is incredible in this film. I would be very shocked if she's like not on some like best supporting actress lists by the end of the year, because the performance that she has to give in this film is amazing. You know, I'm kind of hesitant to talk about her arc and like story in this because you know they don't really give you much in the trailers of what her character is. You know, I'll kind of get into basics like early on in the film, you know, she's Spike's mother, and you know, it's revealed that she's not well, right? She's battling a sickness, and where it goes in the film, and where her character has to go, and the things she has to do, it's the most emotional and poignant and beautiful aspects of the story in the film, and because of the fact that she's sick and she's kind of losing her mind here. She really has to kind of weave in and out between being her normal self in certain scenes, and then between when she goes a little cuckoo because she's sick, and you know the sickness is affecting her and affecting those around her, and she just gives a brilliant performance. Those two and their connection in the film is really all of the emotional weight and really what makes you care about this journey and where these characters are going. And then you got Ray Fiennes and Aaron Taylor Johnson, who both have definitely a smaller role than the marketing would have made you think. Aaron Taylor Johnson's more heavily in the beginning of the film, whereas Ray Fiennes kind of comes into the end. But both of them are great performances. Specifically with Ray Fiennes, I don't think we got enough of Aaron Taylor Johnson for me to like really sink my teeth into the character. But for Ray Fiennes, like what you get, he comes in like the third act, and his character's arrival mixed with the kind of conclusion of the arc of Spike and Isla's arc that they're on in this film, just makes for some of the most beautiful and just gut-wrenching moments. And Ray Fiennes obviously is a fantastic actor, so his contribution to that is what makes a lot of this work and brings a lot of those emotional beats in that third act of the film. But because I'm not making an entire video on the characters of this film and why I like them so much, I have to move on to my other positives in the film, and the next one is going to be the cinematography and the direction from Danny Boyle. This film is beautiful. I mean, there are just so many incredible visual shots in this movie. You know, there's been that like trending photo that's been going around of how they filmed this entirely on iPhones. And, you know, there's that, like, ring circle in front of the infected of, like, 30 iPhones, or I don't remember how many it was specifically. And that scene in particular is incredible. And the way that scene is used is awesome. But this movie is just, like, littered with some of the best cinematography you'll ever see. And some of the most beautiful shots you'll ever see. And also, like, I've seen people complain, but, like, I loved the editing style in this film. Especially in that first half, like there's certain scenes where the way stuff is edited is, you know, definitely like a choice. It's a creative choice that Danny Boyle makes, and some people find it a bit jarring in the way that some of the action is shot. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I thought everything involved with this film was beautifully shot, looked incredible, and just to kind of piggyback and like stay on the same topic of like Danny Boyle's direction, this film takes a lot of bold swings. This film isn't going to try to rehash what we've gotten in this genre. 28 Days Later was a trendsetter for the zombie genre, right? And when you bring back Danny Boyle and you bring back Alex Garland to helm this movie, I don't know why people would have expected something similar to what we got before. If those guys are coming in, they're coming in to do something different. That's their style. That's what they did with 28 Days Later. And that's why I didn't like 28 Weeks Later, because I felt like it just was an average film. It wasn't anything that offered anything new. And that was why, to me, it failed in comparison to 28 Days Later, is because it didn't swing for the fences. It didn't try to do anything new. This film does. They take chances with this film, And for the most part, it works. I mean, again, we're going to get into my negatives here in a little bit, but the direction, the cinematography, the bold choices with the script, the combo of Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, it's incredible. Them in this franchise makes wonderful art, and that's what this movie is art. And that's why, like, I understand some of the people who have problems with this film and why they have problems with this film. I'm assuming some of my reasons are going to be in my negative section as well. But this is a movie that is just for movie fans. It's a movie where you can appreciate filmmaking as an art form. And I thank them for that. And I can't, fault them for some of the swings that they take and they miss in this film, because I'd rather filmmakers take those swings. So Danny Boyle, Alex Garland, everything they did from directing and a writing stand, I'm on board. And I liked what they did here. And then for my final positive of the film, we come to these movies expecting a certain level of gore and violence. And man, this movie does not disappoint. And kind of to piggyback with that as a positive, and what I think worked really well about like the zombie and the infected side of this film, they did a good job at explaining what has changed with these infected 28 years into the zombie apocalypse. So I really enjoyed that. I won't kind of delve into what the differences are, because I think that is kind of spoilery. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see the movie, but there are certain new versions of the zombies and the infected, and the tweaks that they made and the changes that they made to make it different from what we've got previously just worked really well for me. And man, this movie is brutal. There's some very violent scenes, some very gnarly gore. And, as a horror fan, I couldn't get enough of that. I really enjoyed it. And I really liked what we got. And this series is definitely one of my more favorite zombie franchises. And I think it's because of how, like, brutal and visceral the kills are that helps a lot with that. And why I like it so much. So it was no different in this film. But with everything, that I have been praising with this film, there was some negatives I had with it, so I have to get to those. And first on there, and part of the problem I think that a lot of people are having, it wasn't as big of a deal for me, but I'm going to talk about it right off rip, is that there is a lot of swings that they go for in this movie. They try to be bold, they try to do big things, and not all of it works. And I think because they tried to take so many swings and do so many bold things, that it does cause the tone of the film to feel a bit uneven. I feel like that first hour of the film was basically kind of like 28 Days Later Part 2. That's what it felt like to me. And I really enjoyed that. I'm not saying, even though I like the bold stuff, I did also like that first hour where it felt more like it was like straight up just a follow-up to 28 Days Later. And that tone and that seriousness that they had in the original film was very present. And then certain things kind of happen in the halfway point of the movie, and we get to a point where we go on a different path than what we had established for that first hour. And I will say, I do believe that I did enjoy where we went in the second half. I also believe that we had to do some story decisions that didn't really make sense in order to get there. And it's hard to say what those are without going into spoilers. So, if it seems like I'm being vague, it's because I'm trying to intentionally be vague. But I didn't think logically certain story beats and certain things that happen made a whole lot of sense to get us to that second half. And then, the second half definitely has a completely different vibe and tone than the first half. I enjoyed both halves, so I don't think that's as big of a critique for me. But it has been what I've seen a lot of people saying and how they have felt. So I understand, kind of where that criticism comes from. And I'll be honest, to piggyback off that, the ending of this film, particularly the last 3 minutes, is truly some of the most tonal whiplash I've ever seen from a film. Now, I've watched some videos since then to kind of explain what the meaning of the ending was, and some of the more like subliminal things, and certain aspects of it I like. I think where the plot goes in that final 2 minutes, I'm intrigued, right, for the sequel. But the tone that it brings when this ending happens, I thought I was watching a blooper. Like, genuinely, I thought they were playing a blooper for 28 years later, and the movie had already ended. And I don't think that was good. And I'm someone who enjoyed the film, but I still think that ending was done very poorly. And people talk about the second half having more of a comedic tone because a certain character gets introduced and kind of changes it up a little bit, which it does, but it wasn't like so overtly a change in tone that it made me feel like I was watching a different movie. The change in tone in the last 2 minutes felt like I was watching a different movie, genuinely. So to me, that's like the biggest fumble of this film, is that last like 2 to 3 minutes. Like I was baffled, and I mean we already know too that this is part one of a trilogy now that they've revealed. So it leaves off in a cliffhanger. It doesn't really give you something super satisfying to end on. I still think like the main narrative of the movie between Spike and his mom, that was very much wrapped up beautifully, but where they like end the movie doesn't feel satisfying. It feels like, honestly, what it feels like is it felt like the movie ended a couple minutes before, and if they would have made that a post-credit scene, that would have probably been received a little bit better. I think it would have been received a little bit better. I think it's the fact that it's actually the end of the movie that makes it so like, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, yeah, I don't know. The ending was definitely the biggest like bad and negative for the film for me. And then I will say that knowing that this is in a planned trilogy, there was definitely some dangling threads in the plot that I know that they're intentionally leaving open so that way they can pick up back in the sequel. And, I understand that, right? And like I said, I felt like the main story here felt like a satisfying conclusion enough to where it doesn't feel like, oh, this movie isn't even good unless you will get part 2 and 3. I don't think it had that feeling at all. But some of the dangling threads that they introduced, I liked. I didn't have a problem with it because it wasn't tied to the center narrative. Like, there were certain things they introduced and they didn't bring up again that, yes, I would have loved to explore that a little bit more. But because it wasn't constantly being referenced in the central narrative, I didn't have as much of a problem with it. The biggest flaw of this film, when it comes to, not finishing out narrative threads that they set up, is, and I guess this will be a mild spoiler, not really, but I won't spoil anything, but it kind of tells you where we're going. There is a plot point in this film that is centered around an infant baby. And how the infant baby gets into the narrative and into the main storyline, and how it's involved. There's certain things about what happens, and again, I'm trying not to spoil, but there's certain things about how the baby gets involved and what happens that contradict rules that were set up in the previous 2 movies about how all this works. And like I said, with other stuff, when they introduced things and then didn't follow up on them, I didn't have a problem. But with this baby, I did, because the baby was in in the center of the main storyline of the film. So when it kept going back to that, I kept being reminded, like, hey, this dangling thread here, we're gonna dangle it in your face more, and we're not gonna tell you what you want to know. We're not gonna tell you where it's going. You're gonna have to wait until the sequel to find that out. And I didn't enjoy that. I really did not like that, and that is the part of like the dangling open threads that they left in the film that really, really bothered me, and that I'm like, okay, well, we better get some answers. Like, that's my fear, is that like we won't get answers in 2 and 3, and they're just basically like, hey, you're just gonna have to deal with this. I won't like that. That'll be a stain on this movie and then on the following sequels, if they don't give us some answers and maybe wrap that up a little bit better than what we got here. But yeah, overall, guys, I mean, I really enjoyed this film. I know I have some bigger negatives, but I had a fun time with this film. I really felt like they swung for the fences. They tried to be bold. They tried to do big things, and I feel like that I would rather have a film like this that tries to take chances and tries to change things up and maybe not 100% succeed than something like 28 Weeks Later that I think was a little bit just too safe and too familiar. So yeah, I really had a good time with this film. The emotions from the character arcs and the characters itself and the story. I really don't think the story was that bad. The main story, right? I think at times there was just too much going on. The main story, though, man, really pulled at my heartstrings. It really worked for me. It was really effective, and the characters and the actors were really great in the film. Visuals were great. Direction was great. I enjoyed this film. I liked it. I'm definitely, I know this is a divisive film and the internet's been at war with one another about it, but so far, I'm definitely on the side of that. I really like this film. It's not as good as 28 Days Later, but it's really solid. It's really good. And I'm very excited to see what they do here and where this series goes in these next two films, because they have a chance to do something good and unique. And I appreciate that, and I like that. So on a rating scale, I'm probably going to give this a 4 out of 5. I think that's what it's going to get for me. Very enjoyable film. I can't wait to watch it again. I want to watch it again and pick up on those details that I probably missed in that first viewing. There's a lot that happens in this film. It's visually, it's so beautiful. So yeah. So, go ahead and comment below, guys, if you've seen 28 Years Later. Tell me how you thought about it. Give me your reasons why, because I'm assuming some of those reasons I probably talked about in this film. Like I said, I don't think it's perfect, and I can understand why people don't like it, and there's some things that didn't work for a lot of people. Comment below. Let me know what you thought about the film. Subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to keep continuing doing reviews, talk about movies I love. Everyone, have a great night.